alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let us get started, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Let us have the clear and sincere intention to be here to gain the knowledge for sabilillah. So, last time we talked about two matters, which was to what invalidates the wudu, and then how to clean oneself, and called istinja. So the things that invalidated wudu is the emission of anything from the elementary outlets except many, the touching of the penis, vagina, or anus of a human with the inside part of the bare hand, touching the skin of a marriageable woman who has reached the age at which she is normally desired, and losing sanity or consciousness except if one is sleeping with the buttocks firmly seated. And to cleaning oneself, we talked about how there are two categories. If something exits from the elementary exits and is dry, this does not require one to do istinja. However, if the exiting material contaminates, i.e. it's wet, then from there, use water or you use an uprooting material or a combination of both. So now we're going to talk about ghusl. The author said, among the conditions of the prayer is purification from the state of major ritual impurity. This is done by the purification bath, al-ghusl, or dry purification, tayammum. And this is for one that cannot make ghusl. We'll talk about this later, tayammum. So for ghusl, one is required to perform the purification bath after any of these 5 matters occur: the emission of mani, sexual intercourse, the termination of menses, the termination of postpartum bleeding, and childbirth. So the explanation is, among the conditions for the validity of prayer is for one not to be in a state of major ritual impurity. So this means to be clear from major ritual impurity. And there are several things that makes one fall into these states, and it's 5 to be specific. So the first is emission of mani. And so for the male, this means for the mani to appear outside of the penis. For the woman, there are 2 cases. If she is the virgin, then what is meant by the emission of mani is for the mani to appear outside of the vagina. If the woman is not a virgin, then what is meant by the emission of mani is for the mani to reach the area that is visible when the woman sits on her feet to urinate. So when she squats. So if someone feels that the mani is going to come out from them, but the mani does not reach the area which we mentioned for the respectable person and for the scenario, then this does not make ghusl an obligation. So the feeling alone does not make one in the state of major ritual impurity. And so how does one know if the fluid emitted is actually mani? And for that, there are 3 signs. And it's not necessary for these 3 signs to exist together. If one of them exists alone, it is enough to be considered mani. So the first sign of mani is that it exists in spurts. So not at one time, but to exist in a strong way, one after another. The second sign is that it exits with a sense of pleasure. So while it's exiting, one feels pleasure. The third sign is the smell of the fluid. The mani has a special smell that when it's wet, it smells like dough, and when it's dry, it smells like egg white. And these are the signs for both the man and the female. Color is not a sign. The mani might exit with a red color, for example. This is not what happens usually, but it might happen. So if any signs among those 3 signs exit, then this exiting fluid is mani. So if someone sees a fluid on his clothes, so basically, or something exited from him or her, and one notices that, it has one of the three signs of mani, then one has to take a ghusl. So even if he does not feel that it came out, because he is sure that it exited from her or him or her, they have to make ghusl. So likewise, if someone finds mani on the bed in which no other one sleeps or slept on other than himself, in this case, he takes ghusl. And he needs to make up the obligatory prayer that he prayed at the time in which he was sure that it was after the emission of mani. So if someone prayed while knowing that his emission was mani without performing ghusl, they have to make up that prayer. So an example is if someone wakes up to pray Fajr and this person does not check his clothes and he did not feel that anything exited. So he makes wudu, he prays Fajr and he goes, and he does not go back to sleep. He stays awake until it's time to pray Dhuhr and he prays Dhuhr and then Asr. After that, he checked his clothes and he noticed that there is mani on his clothes. He knows the signs and he found that this dry mani smells like egg white. So he is sure that this did not happen after praying Fajr because he did not go back to sleep and he did not feel anything after Fajr. So he is sure that this happened before praying Fajr. Did it happen the past night or the night before that night? He is not sure. But he is sure that it happened before praying Fajr. So in this case, he is obligated to go ghusl and make up the Fajr and Dhuhr and Asr prayer. So one has to make up all the prayers in which he prayed while being in a state of major ritual impurity. And he is certain that he prayed them in a state of major ritual impurity. That is after the emission of mani. If someone doubts, did the emission of mani happen before this prayer or after this prayer, then he is not obligated to make up this prayer. So if he doubts, did the emission of mani occur before that prayer or after it, he does not have to repeat that prayer like in the previous example. If this person goes back to sleep, right? So they prayed Fajr, he made wudu, prayed his prayers, and then he went to sleep. And then he woke up and prayed Dhuhr and Asr. But after Asr, he checked his clothes and he finds mani. In this case, there is a possibility that the emission of mani occurred after Fajr prayer. And there is another possibility that it occurred before praying Fajr, so during the night. Because he doubts, did this happen before Fajr or after it, he does not have to repeat Fajr prayer, but he does need to make ghusl and redo Dhuhr and Asr. Does this make sense? Okay, we're gonna keep going. The third reason for one to make ghusl is menses. So menses is the blood that comes out from the womb of the woman, not after having birth. So this bleeding is without the reason of giving birth or being sick. So such exiting of the blood is not considered menses, except if it happens after the age of 9 lunar years. Almost. So it's 15 days before completing the 9 lunar years and after that. So if blood comes out from a woman before this age, it is because of an illness and it's not considered menses. So the rules do not apply to her. The rules of menses do not apply to her in this case. The least menstruation is 24 hours, which means if the blood comes out and then stops before 24-hour lapses, then when it stops, this woman does not treat this bleeding as menstruation. This is because the blood stops before 24 hours. If the blood comes out, the woman should treat that blood as menstruation, and she does not have to wait 24 hours until treating it as menstruation. But if it stops before the 24 hours, then she does not treat it as such. So when we say 24 hours, we mean that the emission of blood, the exiting of blood goes for 24 hours, whether in a continuous or in a discontinuous way. So for an hour, so for example, if the first day the blood comes out for 1 hour and then it stops. The second day it comes out for 10 hours and then it stops. The third day it comes out for 10 hours and then it stops. And the fourth day it comes out for 3 hours and then it stops. Now the sum of this exiting material of blood in those 4 days is 24 hours. So 1 hour the first day, 10 the second, 10 the third, and then 3 on the fourth. So the sum is 24 hours. Now, if it stops at the fourth day, she needs to take a bath because the sum is now 24 hours, although it's not in a continuous way. This is because it's still within the range of 15 days. So as long as the time of the exiting of the blood is 24 hours or more, and within the range of 15 days, then it would be given the judgment as menses. And this means that the maximum time for menstruation is 15 days. If the blood keeps running for more than 15 days, then this is not menstruation. This is considered abnormal bleeding. For most women, the time of menstruation is 6 to 7 days. So if the blood comes out of a woman and then stops before 24 hours, then she treats it as if she urinates. This means she makes istinjat, she makes wudu, and then she prays because it stopped before 24 hours. Okay, so the third reason for one to be in a state of major ritual impurity is to have sexual intercourse. What is meant by sexual intercourse is to insert the tip of the penis in the vagina or the anus. All of that is considered sexual intercourse. If the tip of the penis is cut off and then one inserts what is equal to it into the vagina or the anus, then this is considered sexual intercourse. This makes ghusl an obligation. And here we want to point out that anal intercourse is haram. But just like how zina is haram, so if someone was a Muslim and they committed these sins, it's still an obligation upon them to make ghusl for their prayers to be valid. So just because someone commits a sin does not excuse them for not performing ghusl and then performing their prayers. The fourth reason for one to be in a major state of major ritual impurity is for the blood that comes out after giving birth. And this is the postpartum bleeding. In Arabic, it's called nifas. So a nifas might be in one spurt, so it might remain for 1 minute or 2 minutes or 1 hour. And then the maximum of it is 60 days. If it keeps going out for more than 60 days, then this is istihada. So it's considered irregular or abnormal bleeding. So after 60 days, this bleeding is not postpartum bleeding. And most of the women, their bleeding is 40 days. So when the menstruation stops is when the ghusl becomes an obligation upon the woman. So likewise, when the postpartum bleeding stops, this is when the woman has to make ghusl, pray, touch the Quran, and the like. The fifth reason is to give birth. So if a woman gives birth to a normal child, or if she miscarries, so something comes out of the womb, and the experts, like the midwife or doctors, say that this, whatever is in like their hand, comes from a human being. This is the stage of a human being versus like a tumor or like worms, Allahu A'lam, something, it could be inside of us, something else that's not a human. So in this case, she needs to take a ghusl, even if no blood follows that birth. If blood comes, then when the blood stops, she needs to take ghusl. So if the blood does not come out, then just for giving birth, she needs to take al-ghusl so she can pray and the like. So additional details that the teacher added here was that if the blood comes out from the woman before 9 years old, this is not considered menses. If she is 7 years old and blood comes out from her, um, again, this is not considered menses. So how does she treat this blood? What does this girl do in this case, she does whatever she does when she urinates. So she treats this blood that comes out just as she treats urine. She makes it sinjat and then makes wudu, and she does not need to make ghusl. And so we also said that the minimum time for menstruation is 24 hours. If the blood stops 24 hours, after 24 hours, then the woman has to take a bath to pray, ghusl, to have sexual intercourse with her husband and the like. So if you didn't know before, when the woman stops her menstruation, she needs to take a ghusl. And then after that, she can have intercourse with her spouse. It's not, if she doesn't do that, then she is sinful. Um, yeah, so you, because it's not allowed, it's not permissible for the woman and the husband to have intercourse while the woman is in menstruation. Okay. So if she does that, and then within the period of 15 days since the beginning of the menstruation blood, the blood comes back because we said that the minimum is 24 hours and the maximum is 15 days. So now she knows that the menstruation really did not end at the time that she thought it ended. And so she knows she is still in the state of menstruation. Again, when the blood stops, she needs to do an ghusl a second time. So this basically says if the menstruation was, she had menstruation for 7 days and then it was gone, and then it came back on like the 8th day. She considers this blood menstruation and then she needs to make ghusl because it did not go past 15 days. The woman does not, the teacher goes on and says, the woman does not have to check herself every little while to see if the blood stopped or not. So actually she feels when the blood stops. When she feels the sign of the stop of the blood, then if she wants, she can use a piece of cotton or the like to check. If she notices that this piece of cotton does not carry any trace of blood, then she knows that the blood has stopped. She takes a ghusl to pray. And she does not have to check herself every little while for that. But if she feels that the blood stopped and then if she wants to be more sure, she introduces a piece of cotton or so, she can do that to check. So sometimes the blood keeps coming out, but in small quantities. So this does not actually appear outside of the vagina. So that's how she makes sure her menstruation is over. If she checks and she sees any color among the colors of blood, then she considers that to be menstruation. The blood might be very dark, close to black sometimes. Other times it's red, pink, and even close to the color of dirt. In all these cases, it's considered blood. So there was a question asked that if a woman's blood comes out from, if the woman's blood comes out and then it stops, but she has a habit that her blood stops for 10 hours and then she gets it back. And this happens every time with her menses. Does she have to make ghusl? Okay, and then the answer is, so let's say the blood stops after 24 hours, at the beginning of Dhuhr time. She needs to make ghusl and pray, even though that she knows the blood will return after 10 hours. She cannot rely on that to miss prayers, and she cannot do that because although that this is habit of her body, the blood might not come back. So when it stops, she can wait for a while to do ghusl. She doesn't have to do it immediately, but she cannot wait until she misses a prayer. So, for example, Dhuhr comes in and her bleeding stops, but you have 2-3 hours to pray dhuhr. She doesn't have to make it initially. She doesn't have to make it automatically. She can wait 1 hour, but she cannot wait past the time that she misses dhuhr prayer. So she has to pray dhuhr. The question is, isn't obligatory upon her to check if everything came out from her or not before she prays? The answer is no, she does not have to do that. If she feels she knows that something came out and then she checks, what is this? Right? And so it's basically kind of like a guessing, certain or not certain. Sometimes ghusl need to be made more than once. So she does the best that she can, basically. Okay, and there's a note here that anal sex is haram, but although it is haram if it happens, ghusl is obligatory. People, especially now, commit haram at all times. Zina is also haram, and if it happens, then ghusl is an obligation. Because someone commits haram, it does not make it for them, it does not take from them the obligation of ghusl. Zina and sodomy are obviously haram and should not be committed. Okay, the next, does anybody have questions? If not, we're gonna go to the integrals of ghusl. And these are things that need to be done for the ghusl to be valid. So the author said the integrals of purification bath are two. So one, to have the intention to clear oneself from the state of major ritual impurity or similar intention. The S word.
Hey, salam alaikum. Sorry, I just saw what is the other what is that? Sodomy?
Sodomy.
Sodom what sorry, could you explain what that is?
That's anal. That's anal sex.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's just that's proper the proper term for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry. Thanks.
you're good. Okay. So the author said the integrals of purification bath are two. To have the intention to clear oneself of the state of major ritual impurity or similar intention. And the second one is to wash the whole body with water, including the skin and the hair, even if the hair is thick. The explanation, there are two integrals of the ghusl. The first one is the intention. So one intends, for example, to lift the major ritual impurity. He might not specify in his heart the issue of being major. If one just has in his heart that now he is lifting the ritual impurity, this is enough. Or to have the intention of making the obligatory ghusl, or to make the intention that he is now doing what makes it lawful for him to pray. These are all valid. So now if one makes the intention in his heart that he is now making purification, just that. He did not think about anything more, just he is now doing a purification or doing a ghusl. This is not enough as an intention. This is because there are different types of ghusl. For example, there's a sunnah ghusl before making umrah. And because there are different types of purification, if one has not, if he only has the intention of purification, he doesn't specify which purification he is doing or which ghusl he is doing, then this is not enough. So the intention has to be of making the obligatory ghusl, and that works if he has the intention of just making the ritual ghusl. Okay, does that make sense? So that's why if he has the intention of making the obligatory ghusl, that works. And if he has the intention of making just a ritual ghusl, that is not enough to lift the major ritual impurity. So he needs to have the intention, and this intention needs to be when he starts washing his body. So if he washes his head before making the intention, and then he makes the intention, in this case, he has to wash his head again. This is because he washed his head before the intention, so it's not counted. The second integral is that one needs to wash his body. So the hair and the skin with water. Also be careful too and make sure that you're washing behind your ear, the belly button, the skin underneath the nails, and between the fingers and toes. But he does not need to wash inside his eyes, his nose, or inside his mouth. For the ear, one washes what appears. So there's a hole, an opening, which is visible. So for example, if he takes some water in his hand and he puts his ear in that water, that would be enough to wash the ear. And if someone is overweight, then this person needs to observe that the water, to make sure it reaches the bands and the layers of his body, the skin that is overlapping, and the such and the like. And there's additional detail here that the sheikh mentioned. And that is if someone is taking a bath and while he's doing that in his heart, he has intention of the obligatory ghusl, this is enough for a valid intention. If someone commits the sin of having sodomy, and this is anal sexual intercourse with his wife, this is haram, but this does not become divorce. She does not become divorced from him. So some people falsely say that this is a divorce and they are wrong. They are the ones who are perverting the rules of the religion. Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, Maliki, and the like, they don't say that. It's haram for the wife to enable her husband to have sodomy with her. He does not let him commit a sin, and she does not participate in that sin. So there's a question. If someone wants to make ghusl, but when he goes into the bathroom, he forgets. And then he takes the bath without having the intention of taking the obligatory ghusl. Although this is why he got into the bathroom. So basically he has the intention before the water hits him, right? And then the water hits him and he forgets to make the intention and then he leaves, right? And then he remembers after taking the ghusl. Shafi'i, in this case, says it's not valid reason because when he did it, he did not have the intention of lifting the ritual impurity. In the Hanifa school, however, it works. In the Hanifa school, if someone takes a shower without remembering that he needs to take ghusl, and then he remembers after finishing, he considers that the ritual impurity is lifted, and he does not need the intention for that. Okay, and another note is if a woman feels that the feeling that something is going out of her with pleasure, just like how she feels when the mani comes out, this is enough for her to consider that she is in the state of major ritual impurity, even if she does not see something coming out. If a woman touches her husband in a certain area and he gets aroused, does she have to take the ghusl? The answer is no, except if there was such sexual intercourse or the mani comes out from either her or him. So the one whose mani comes out needs to take a ghusl in this case. If a woman takes a ghusl and she does not pay attention that she has something on her nails that prevents the water to reach the nails, then when she notices this, she needs to take off. She needs to take it off and wash her nails. Just her nails, and then she needs to repeat that prayer to make up the prayers that she prayed after taking the ghusl and before washing the nails. So she needs to make up those prayers. And there's also a note here, even when making wudu, if you have something that prevents the water to touch, whether it's your skin or your nails, the wudu is not valid. And also be careful here of the makeup products that you use. If it's like even lotion or Vaseline or something. I don't know if Vaseline is considered, but some products are they repel water. And if they do that, then this prevents obviously the water from touching your skin. And so that needs to be removed before making wudu. And there's a case here also. So if something comes out from the person, something comes out, right? And the person doubts about it. And the person checked like what came out and he was not sure and he doubts if what came out was mani or not. In this case, he has a choice. He either considers it mani and makes ghusl or considers it something else and then just makes istinja. And he has a choice to do that. Okay, we have 8 minutes. Should I run through this last chapter or should I? Let's see what we can go through and then inshallah we'll see where we stop. Inshallah, find a nice place to stop. Okay, so the next chapter, a small chapter you can consider is the conditions of pure and purifying water. So now we're going to talk about the conditions of purification. And the conditions of one's purification are to be Muslim, to be at the age of mental discrimination, to remove anything that prevents the water from reaching the part to be washed, to let water flow on that part to be washed, and to use purifying water. So the author said, among the conditions for purification to be valid is to be Muslim. So it's not valid for a non-Muslim to make ghusl or wudu, even if he does exactly what the Muslims do. This is because the intention of the non-Muslim is invalid. There is one exception, which is the ghusl that the Christian or Jewish wife makes after her menstruation stops for her Muslim husband to have sexual intercourse with her. In this case, ghusl is valid. Likewise, after the postpartum bleeding. If she embraces Islam, she needs to make ghusl again. But this does not mean that for one to embrace Islam, they need to be on a ghusl. No. Someone can embrace Islam while not being on ghusl or wudu. Matter of fact, if a lot of people do this, if someone says to a non-Muslim, hey, before you take your shahada, you need to make wudu or ghusl, the person who actually tells them to do that is committing blasphemy because they are promoting blasphemy. They're saying, wait, actually stay on your blasphemy until you clean yourself. And this doesn't even make sense because for the wudu or ghusl to be valid, you have to be a Muslim. So if such a person comes to you, or if you hear of such a case, the person who wants to embrace Islam, you take their shahada at that point. The author also said, for the conditions of purification is to be at the age of mental discrimination. The one who is not in a state of mental discrimination, if he makes wudu, then his wudu is not valid. If he makes ghusl, then his ghusl is not valid. An exception is the ghusl of the little child who is not at the age of mental discrimination, when he's making hajj. So some matters of hajj is sunnah to make ghusl before doing them. So the guardian washes the child. And likewise, he makes the child or washes the child to make wudu when needed. And this will be valid as an exception. As for other than that, the child who is not in a state of mental discrimination, it's not valid for him to do so. The author said to remove anything that prevents water from reaching the part to be washed. An example, any material of his hand that prevents the water from reaching the skin of his hand. One needs to remove this material to wash the skin that is underneath it. This is why the woman needs to remove the nail polish before making wudu or ghusl. It's a condition for purification. The author said to let the water flow on the part to be washed. If one is taking the obligatory or the sunnah bath, one needs to wash his body. So just wet wiping the body or part is not enough. And just like we mentioned before, if someone's making istinjat, you can't wet paper towel, take the paper towel, wet it, and then use it to clean yourself. That's not valid. The water needs to be flowing. Wet wipes, for example, is not a valid way to purify oneself or even, I believe, to clear najasa filth. So likewise in wudu, the body parts need to be washed. If one only wet wipes them, then his wudu would not be valid. Now, washing any part of the body might be done by using one's hand, and it might occur without using one hand. So it doesn't matter for the validity of washing that part. What matters is for that part to be washed. So for example, if you put your hand under the faucet and all what needs to be washed is washed, this is enough. If you do not touch your hand with the other hand, or did not spread the water with your other hand, this is still okay as long as the water touched it. But also using your other hand, like if you're using your left hand to spread the water on your forearms and elbow, this is valid. So what matters for the validity is to wash the body part, whether using the hand or not, with flowing water. Yeah, and we said while wiping is not sufficient in performing ghusl, wudu, and istinja. Yeah. This is because the flow of water is conditioned for the validity of purification. The meaning to let the water flow on the part is for the water to inherently flow on the skin, even if it's supported by the hand over the water to cause it flow. Wet wiping is not valid and it's not called washing. And we'll stop here. I think that was a lot. Inshallah, that was okay. Does anybody have any questions? We have like 2 minutes. Wa iyyakum. Thank you guys for showing up. Barakallahu feekum. Let's say tahleel salatu ala nabi. You too. May Allah reward you guys for coming and showing, inshallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. May Allah give a similar reward, all of our rewards combined together to the Prophet ﷺ and to the Muslims that are alive and those who are dead and our family Muslims that passed away. Give them a similar reward so that their rank will be increased, and to also give a similar reward to the companions and the scholars who have preserved this knowledge. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Barakallahu feekum. I'll see you guys Sunday, inshallah. Love you too. Thank you guys for showing up. You guys are real too. Thank you for being consistent. Inshallah, increase our hasanat in this dunya and our akhirah. Our rank, should I say. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, yes. Yes, let's party in Jannah.